Hello students, let us start with a new chapter. That's chapter number 7 of your textbooks, Triangles. Let's see the topics to be covered. We have Introduction, Congruence of Triangles, Criteria for Congruency of Triangles, Properties of Triangle and Inequalities in a Triangle. So let us first understand what is triangle. So we will start with the introduction. If I tell you what is a triangle, very simply what you will do is you will draw this something similar to this for me and you will name it as, let's say, ABC. So this is what a triangle looks like, but what is the formal definition? The formal definition of a triangle is that it's a three-sided closed figure. Why closed is important? Let's say if I take any three-sided figure, three-sided means three sides. So I have three sides, right? But this section is open, right? But triangle, all the sides, they are connected to each other by 3 points, 1, 2 and 3. Therefore, this figure is closed, right? So, what's the formal definition of triangle? Three-sided closed figure. Now, the term triangle itself, let's say I take tri means 3 and angle, we know that it is angles, right? So, these are closed-sided closed figure which has 3 angles. So, if I take my triangle, it has 3 sides, correct? These are the 3 sides. There are 3 angles and there are 3 vertices, right? So, a triangle has 3 sides, 3 angles and 3 vertices. In the previous chapter, that was chapter 6, lines and angles, the last section we studied about the angle sum property of a triangle. This chapter is however based more on the congruency of triangles. But before we proceed any further, let's understand why are we studying this topic. So, triangles are going to come handy in various fields. For example, if you have a building, right? This is a tower or a building, and you need to measure the height of it. This is just a replica of the building. This is not the exact building size. Now, if you want to measure the height of this building, it's very simple to find it out. How? Suppose, let's say you are a person who's standing on the same ground where the building is standing. If you know this distance from here to here, this is very easy to calculate. Also, if you know the angle that is made with the building, then you can use your hypotenuse theorem to find the height of the building. That would be, so the height of the building would be hypotenuse square minus side square. So, this is one such example. So, if you notice, triangles are very important in the field of architecture. Also, triangles are of great importance in astronomy. Then you have physics. Plus, when you go further in your future classes, you will study a very important topic known as vectors. Vectors is a quantity which has magnitude and direction. You will see a lot of application of triangles for vectors. So, these are just some small examples where triangles come in very handy. Also, it is one of the basic things that you should learn in geometry, right? So, now since I mentioned that we are going to emphasize more on the congruency of triangles, let us understand what is the term congruent mean. Congruent means 2 or more objects. So, let me write this down. Two or more objects that are exactly the same. So what do I mean by exactly the same? Here it means, obviously we are talking about geometry, so we will have dimensions. So this would be in shape as well as size. So you may have two things that look similar, but they are not exactly either having the same shape or same size. In most cases they will have the same shape, but the sizes would vary. For example, if I take these two objects, right, they both look like triangles and they look similar, but when I place it on one on top of the other in any form, they do not overlap. So superimpositioning is not happening. Therefore these two objects are not congruent. So I have two boxes now. They are looking similar, right? And if I place one on top of the other, the one that is behind gets hidden. That means this one is overlapping this one. Similarly, this object will overlap this object. So superimpositioning is happening. Therefore these two objects are congruent. Another very simple example. I have taken these two glasses. They look similar. Let's place one before the other, right? This one is superimpositioning, this one or overlapping it. So they look similar, that is the shape is the same. See, it's more like a cone that is cut from the bottom, right? As well as the size is the same. They are of equal size. Therefore, I can say that these two objects are congruent. So I hope you got an idea of what congruency is. In congruency, it is very important that the corresponding dimensions should be equal. Let's take an example. If I have a square that has let's say side 4 centimeters or let's say 4 units, and if I have a square that has 5 units. Now area of this square would be 16 and area of this would be 25. By the area itself we can say that they are not congruent, but is that sufficient? No. Although they look similar, they are not congruent, because look over here, if I place this triangle on this triangle, it would this square on this square, this part of my square would still show. That means square 4 is not capable of overlapping square 5. So they are not congruent, right? Now if I take two lollipops, right? They both look similar. If I move this lollipop on top of this, it will completely hide this lollipop. Therefore, these two lollipops are congruent. Now let's move on to congruency of triangles. So I'll draw certain figures over here and we will see how exactly they are congruent and whether the triangles are congruent or not. So what I am doing now is I am drawing 4 different triangles and we will see why. My last triangle, I will call it LMN. 5, 5 and 4.5. So in order to find whether whether these 4 triangles are congruent, I'll consider, let's say, my triangle ABC, and I will check one by one whether these triangles are congruent to this triangle. Now for triangles to be congruent, the criteria is the angles, the corresponding angles and the corresponding sides should be equal. So we will understand corresponding while we compare. Now so if I say triangle ABC, let's see how ABC is moving. ABC is moving as 4, then 4.5 and 5, correct? It's going like this, A to B, B to C and C to A. So what is the sequence? 4, 4.5 and 5, correct? Let's see for triangle PQR, first of all, whether we have the same dimension. So what do we need? 4, 4.5 and 5. So we have 4, we have 4.5 and 5. But let's see how it's moving. Although they are twisted, see, I have not drawn the angle in the similar manner, right? I have drawn ABC like this, I have drawn PQR like this. This doesn't mean that they are not congruent. We will compare the corresponding sides. First of all, we know that this triangle is congruent to this triangle. Why? Because all the sides are equal. But we need to find what are the corresponding sides and angles accordingly, right? So let's see. First we need 4, then 4.5. So we are going to go 4 or 4 like this. So if suppose I take this direction, Q to P, I get 4, then 5, right? So this is wrong. I will go from P to Q, I get 4 and then I get 4.5 and then I get 5, correct? So what is my corresponding triangle going to be? It's going to be PQR. Therefore I can say PQR is congruent to triangle ABC, right? Now let's see this triangle over here. What is my sequence? 4, 4.5 and 5. So I have 4 and 5 here. How about 4 and 4.5? So this direction, x to y, y to z and z to x, correct? Therefore I have which triangle? X, y, z is congruent to triangle ABC, correct? Now let's see this one, this triangle. See the terms over here. I have 5, 5 and 4.5. Obviously, one of the sides should be 4. Let's say if this was supposed to be 4, one of them is not 4. Therefore, we can simply say that this triangle, you can just say the triangle LMN. You can take any sequence here right now, LMN, because obviously the triangle is not congruent. Therefore, I can take any sequence. So, LMN is not congruent to triangle ABC. Why? Because the sides are not, the corresponding sides or see these values are not equal. So first of all, the sign for congruency is an equal to sign with a tilde on top, which is what I have done over here. So now if I take angle ABC and PQR, let's say, what are the corresponding sides? If I am going from A to B, side AB corresponds, the corresponding sign is given by a line and 2 arrows, correct? So AB corresponds to, or I'll rather say, since we are taking PQR and ABC, if I take PQ, so PQ, it is 4, but we have to even see which are the other sides of it. So PQ or QP, if I take PQ, I'll take a look at the other side, which is 4.5. So if I'm taking PQ, I will also have to take AB because the side that comes after B is 4.5. So PQ corresponds to AB. Similarly, QR, so let's take a look at QR. I have QR, after R I have 5. So I need to take 4.5 and the next side after it that follows should be 5. So BC, so QR corresponds to BC. Similarly, I have PR. If I take PR, so what is PR over here? I have PR, so 5 followed by 4.5. So 5 followed by 4.5 will be CB. AC. And if I take RP, RP is what? It is 5 followed by 4. So here 5 followed by 4 is CA. CA followed by 4. So these are the corresponding sides. So in a now if the two triangles are congruent, then the corresponding sides are also congruent. So I will say, instead of, now I am just removing this corresponding sign, and I will say that these two sides are congruent. All these sides are congruent. Let's take into consideration the angles, because we have shown that the sides are equal or congruent. Now we will look for angles. So if I take angle, say BAC, or I will say PRQ, angle PRQ. Let's see how to go about this. So I have P, R and Q. So 5 and 4.5. How am I going to go about this? 5 ACB is congruent to angle ACB. It is very important that you write it, mention the angles that are congruent in this format only. You cannot write BCA here. PRQ. It's not a good practice to write it in this format. BCA. Also, although you know this angle C is going to be equal to R, CP doesn't correspond to P. P corresponds to A. That is why we have CP corresponds to A, Q corresponds to B, and R corresponds to C. Correct? So if I am writing something in this format, let's say I am writing QPR. So what is corresponding to Q? To Q corresponds B. So I will write B. How about P? What corresponds to P? A is corresponding to P. And what is corresponding to R? Finally, I have C. So angle QPR is congruent to angle BAC. So this is about corresponding angles. So whenever two triangles are congruent, the corresponding sides and corresponding angles are going to be equal. And while you are solving your sums, you are going to mention a term called CP CT. This means corresponding paths of congruent triangles. Right? So if you prove that two triangles are congruent, you can easily prove that the corresponding sides and angles are congruent, and just mention CPCT, which means corresponding paths of congruent triangles. So this was about the introduction as well as congruency, the basic concepts of congruency, where we learned about correspondence. We will take a look at the in-depth detail in the forthcoming lectures. Thank you.
Hope this video increased your knowledge. For more such videos and a completely free educational content, log on to www.epathshala.org or visit our ePathshala YouTube channel. We have each and every question solved for maths, physics, chemistry and biology. So subscribe our channel, share with your friends, like our Facebook page and follow our Twitter handle for regular updates and important educational tips, and also win ePathshala goodies. So what are you waiting for? Subscribe this channel and enjoy the freedom of education.